The moment the trigger clicked, there was no sound left in Kane's world. Inside the chamber, the round spun with vicious precision, pushed by a handmade compound that ignited hotter than protocol would ever allow. The barrel glowed a brief, ghostly red, then cooled as the projectile pierced atmosphere, carving its path through Delvar 9's turbulence with surgical grace. Kane had calibrated every variable: wind, magnetic drift, orbital wobble, even the thermal bloom from the twin suns at this hour. A bullet born of old metal and newer madness. Primitive in design, perfect in intent. High above, General Korvac had begun to laugh. Primitive, he said again, to no one in particular. His bridge crew remained silent, arranged in perfect triangular formations around the holosphere of Delvar 9. The flagship Velshar pulsed with soft lights, and the rhythm of the artificial gravity hum underfoot played like a hymn to order. Vake leaned into main terminal, sharp eyes narrowing at the slowly rotating topography of the ruined colony world. The human has fired. Let it be logged. Final gesture of defiance. He gestured with one elongated, talon-like finger. Deploy the seismic lance. We'll level Sector 12 and reclaim the processor core from his corpse. A young Thalrexian technician blinked. General, request to delay the seismic deployment by 90 seconds. Atmospheric distortion spike detected. Korvac turned, mildly amused. 90 second for what? A dust cloud. Negative, sir. Trajectory anomaly. One high-velocity object, non-guided, magnetic base, exiting from coordinates traced to the human's last location. The general frowned. A bullet? Yes, sir. Charming. Korvac dismissed the warning with a wave. One bullet does not concern me. It's ceremonial, a performance for a dying species. He said the words flatly, but there was tension behind his ridged brow. He watched as data streams began auto-analyzing the projectile's flight path. The Thalrexian Empire had purged 57 colonies across 3 sectors. No known projectile weapon had ever pierced a single layer of their armor, let alone the flagship's core shielding. The very idea was laughable. But there was a difference between improbable and impossible, and Kane, for all his primitivity, had always thrived in that gap. Back in the wreckage of Delvar 9, Kane sat still, muscles refusing to twitch. He knew the kind of silence that came after a shot like that. He felt it before. The breathless, suspended kind. A quiet that listened back. He leaned his head against the cold steel behind him and closed his eyes. Just once. Rico's voice echoed in his memory. Recorded, remembered, embedded deeper than any tech ever could. You ever think we're just ghosts with unfinished aims? He didn't answer it then. He wouldn't now. Merrick Juno stood alone in the command bunker back on Earth, eyes locked on the telemetry feed. The long-range monitor, a 9th-gen grav-array scanner, was glitching in and out, overwhelmed by solar interference and distance. But one thing had lit up on the screen. A ripple, a small disturbance flickering across the upper orbital band. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Did he do it? Someone behind him whispered. Merritt didn't speak. His throat was dry. They'd barely believed Kane was alive, let alone capable of altering the outcome of an interstellar siege. The odds had been staggering, the politics worse. Humanity's Central Command had already begun negotiations for conditional surrender, if only to save the inner colonies from Thalrexian cleansing. But Merrick had waited. He diverted satellite power, held off signatures, fed Kane ghost signals to mask his location, just long enough to line up a shot no man should even attempt. And now, far above Delvar 9, the bullet kissed the Velshar's outer field. The ship's shields rippled, absorbed, rejected, until they didn't. A micro-oscillation at the edge of the power coils casing a line with the bullet's uranium dust layer. The shielding flared. Static ignited. Then came the spark. A fracture. Not visible. Not loud, but deep. Inside the ship's engine housing, hundreds of conduits began shorting simultaneously. The power core, a rotating lattice of stabilized antimatter rings, buckled as a single microscopic impact forced one containment loop into a collision path. Korvac stood frozen as the bridge lights dimmed. What is this? Unstable containment, General. There's a breach in... A soundless tremor overtook the room. Monitors shattered inward. One crew member collapsed, nose bleeding, as pressure plates cracked under his boots. The containment field screamed, its pitch climbing past, hearing into something felt in the bones. Core Vake roared, "Emergency phase shift. Drop the core. Purge now." But it was already too late. The core imploded. A flash bloomed outward, pale blue and white, then collapsed back into the ship's heart before exploding again. This time with finality. Every Thalrexian ship in the fleet registered the energy pulse. Half of them lost synchrony with the command AI network. 3 vessels collided mid-maneuver. Communications dropped. Automated systems glitched, failed, or began recursive reboot loops. Drones spiraled into orbit without directives. The Velshar itself disintegrated, its fragments scattering across Delwar 9 sky like fireworks written in vengeance. On the ground, Ken opened his eyes. The glow in the clouds told him everything he needed to know. He didn't smile. He didn't flinch. He just breathed out once and whispered, "Got you?" Above him, the orbital chaos raged, but he didn't look up. Instead, he took off his earpiece, set it gently next to the broken photo of Rico Have, and began breaking down the Reaper MK for the kind of ritual care given to something sacred. Pieces clicked apart, metal brushed clean, each movement patient, practiced, final. Back on Earth, Merrick Juno stepped away from the feed as engineers scrambled. Sirens started, then died. The Thalrexian diplomatic signals ceased entirely. A calm officer called out, "Sir, Delwar 9's fleet has gone dark. Multiple AI systems down. It's chaos up there. We might actually have a window." Juno stood frozen. A general entered behind him. "What just happened?" Juno finally answered, voice low. He took the shot. The general stared at the screen. "One bullet." "Yes." The general didn't laugh. He just nodded once. "Then start mobilizing, while they're blind." Juno didn't answer. He simply reached into his pocket and touched a small, worn ID tag he'd carried since cadet school, a gift from a man who told him, once upon a time, that legends weren't born, they were made, usually by people who were already dying. The wind shifted on Delwar 9. Ash clouds moved in slow spirals. Kane secured the rifle parts in a canvas wrap, stood up, and stretched sore limbs. He looked toward the horizon. He didn't need thanks. He didn't need a name carved into anything. He just needed to vanish again. As the dust rolled over the ruins, the sniper disappeared back into a world that thought him primitive. The stars, for the first time in a long time, stayed quiet. The moons of Delvar, 9 never slept. Twin orbs of fractured light, half consumed by atmospheric dust and orbital decay, hovered endlessly over the scorched crust of the abandoned colony. The ruins, once a thriving forward base for Earth Command, now crumbled under shifting winds, radioactive ash, and silence. Not total silence, though, not for him. Corporal Elias Kane lay prone beneath the wreckage of what had once been a communications array, his rifle positioned through a narrow break in the twisted metal. The scope hummed faintly as it adjusted to microfluctuations in air density. He barely blinked, still as stone, a breathing relic with one remaining round and a vendetta. He had been stationed here with a full unit 6 months ago. Now there was only him. The Thalrexians had swept through the Delwar system in coordinated waves. No warnings, no ultimatums. They didn't speak much to humans. They simply labeled Earth's technology insufficient, its strategies irrational, its forces primitive. Kane had heard the broadcast on repeat. The simulation confirms your extinction curve. Surrender and minimize suffering. The voice had been cold, distinctly alien, metallic reverberations blended with tonal clicks only barely decipherable by Earth tech. He didn't care what language they used. He had no intention of surrendering. He had already seen what surrender meant. The last order from command was clear: extraction aborted. He was written off as Kia, killed in action, file closed. That suited Kane fine. A dead man could take more risks. Through the scope, he traced a distant skyline, where pillars of black glass jutted into the red haze. Thalrex mobile command centers, built like inverted pyramids, floated just above the surface, anchored by invisible grav hooks. They scanned the ruins with drones the size of birds, tiny, blinking things that buzzed and clicked like mechanical insects. He downed 7. They never sent the same model twice. His rifle, a relic of Earth's past, had no onboard AI, no predictive aim, no heat-seeking rounds, no smart recoil. It was purely mechanical by design. The old-timers called it the Reaper Mk4. Bolt action, carbon core barrel, hand-loaded with an armor-piercing sabot round modified with uranium dust and a stabilizer chip ripped from a mining drill. It kicked like a mule, but Kane had fired it so many times it felt like part of his body. He adjusted the elevation dial a fraction. Wind was rising. Storm coming. Good. In the cracked photo taped to the scope, a younger Kane smiled beside a lean, dark-haired man with a toothpick in his mouth and dirt under his nails. Sergeant Rico Have. They'd served together across 5 planets. Have was dead now, vaporized in a drone strike outside the abandoned reactor to the west. Kane hadn't removed the photo. He needed the weight of that memory. Wind speed-locked. Breathe. Fire. Hav's voice echoed from the recorded spotter file in his earpiece. Kane played it sometimes. Not for accuracy. He knew the rhythm by heart, but for silence's sake. Silence, left too long, became a monster. The aliens hadn't made their final move yet. Not here. Delvar. 9 was unimportant in the grand scheme. No rich resources, no strategic jumps. But for reasons unknown, the Thalrex still lingered, still scanned the surface, still deployed those damn floating command centers. It was bait. Kane knew it. He didn't care. Miles above, aboard the Thalrexian command ship Velshar, General Korvake's voice crackled across the sky. Another broadcast. Human anomaly designation. Corporal Elias Kane, your last known location has been narrowed to Sector 12. Your technology has been deemed ceremonial. This is your final offer. Deactivate your weapon and await disassembly. Kane smiled without humor. He rolled his shoulder and stretched a leg. It had been a long day. No sleep, no food, save for a half-bar of synthetic protein chewed down that morning. His body ached. His mind sharp as ever. He sighted the floating command center central node, a power coil shimmering blue in the scope's lens. That coil, Kane knew from old files, connected to the relay system between the fleet and the orbital AI. Without that relay, command synchronization would stutter. A small stutter. Maybe a second. Maybe half. It was enough. He checked his ammo cache. 1 round. Just 1. He didn't flinch. He didn't hesitate. He had always known it would come to this. His job wasn't to kill hundreds. It was to make the shot that mattered. Back on Earth, people believed warfare had evolved beyond the need for snipers. Satellite strikes, AI-led infantry, orbital bombardments. They didn't require humans pulling triggers. That was a story for history books. But Kane remembered the first lesson I've ever taught him. No AI can predict madness. And nothing is more unpredictable than a man with nothing left. Kane activated the targeting scanner. External only, no internal processors to risk being traced. His HUD flickered briefly, then stabilized. Wind at 14 knots. Heat distortion low. Gravity flux at 0.7% deviation. He ran the math. Once, twice, a third time. Then he exhaled. For a moment, he could feel it beside him. Ghost memory. The phantom weight of brother-in-arms leaning in, whispering just loud enough to hear. Do it slow. Let him think they've won. He squeezed the trigger halfway, stopped, let his heartbeat slow. Outside, another drone zipped past, its sensors scanning low. Kane didn't move. The drone passed. He returned his focus. Another broadcast, this time from a different voice. The accent less rehearsed, younger. Human. Corporal Kane, this is Lieutenant Merrick Juno of Earth Command Strategic Ops. If you're alive and hearing this, don't respond. Just know the shot matters. We've lost the Southern Front. We need a symbol. Kane closed his eyes for half a second. He didn't need to be told. The fleet in orbit was celebrating already. The Thalrex believed Earth's surrender inevitable. Their arrogance was their armor and their weakness. All Kane needed to do was crack it once. He ran the final calibration. Wind shifted. His finger tensed. And then he stopped. Something in the periphery. A flicker. A distortion wave. He shifted the scope. Zoomed. There, high above the planet's atmosphere, visible only for a fraction of a second. The flagship. The Velshar. He hadn't known it was in visual range. Hadn't expected it. But there it was, momentarily visible through the interference. And it was lined perfectly. He reconfigured. Adjusted trajectory by 6 degrees. It was insane. A 1 in a million shot. But the power coil on that ship wasn't just a relay. It was a fusion core housing the command AI cluster. If that coil ruptured, it would trigger a cascade across the fleet. He looked at the bullet. Simple. Clean. An elegant little death in metal and dust. He chambered it. Outside, the wind howled harder. The dust thickened. The sky turned blood orange. He licked cracked lips and let the scope align. The planet itself seemed to hold its breath. No AI can predict madness, he murmured. He fired. The shot echoed like thunder through the ruins, and then silence. He didn't wait to see the result. He packed the rifle, left the scope, and sank back into the rubble, eyes closed, heartbeat steady. He had done what needed to be done. Above, somewhere far beyond the dust and clouds, the bullet was still flying. A sliver of Earth's past, headed for the future, they said had no place for him. Let them see how primitive he really was. The ridge was soaked in blood and smog. The once pristine snow had been churned to mud and ash, the echoes of orbital cannon fire still thudding in the bones of the Earth. Caleb could taste the metal in the air, dust, blood, carbon, the death of another battlefield. Somewhere behind him, the wind keened through jagged rocks like a mourning widow. He rolled onto his side, eyes trained down his scope. The last shot had left a crater where the Galactic General's convoy once stood. The chaos that followed had scattered their chain of command into digital vapor. Caleb's finger hovered over the trigger again. Lieutenant Harris's voice crackled through the comms, rough and urgent. Eagle 1, report status. Caleb adjusted the rangefinder dial with silent precision. Target package 4-2 neutralized. Scanning for 5-2. Stand by. Below, the battlefield was in disarray. Armored walkers stumbled without command. Gunships hovered, waiting, twitching in erratic flight paths. The central AI hive had gone silent, its uplink destroyed by a bullet they never saw coming. Juno's squad was still ghosted in the snowfield. They hadn't moved since the initial engagement. Their camouflage and heat sinks held, invisible in the infrared, non-reflective to radar. 5 shadows, breathing as one. Caleb, Harris said again, a tremor undercutting the discipline. We've got a fleet re-entry signature. Something big. Looks like a forward dreadnought. You poked the Hornet's nest too hard. Caleb exhaled slowly, long and measured. Let them come. The uplink shimmered as a foreign voice pierced their private channel. Unexpected and bold. Synthetic but cocky. A translator embedded the words in their HUDs. This is Admiral Kyrex of the Sovereign Line. Cease fire and surrender your position. You have executed a war crime under Galactic Treaty 17. Caleb grinned humorlessly. I thought we were primitives. Silence. Then, we underestimated your effectiveness. Lay down your weapons. No more need to die today. Too late for that, Caleb muttered. The scope flickered briefly as a fresh target appeared. A tri-winged transport was descending behind the ridge, likely reinforcements or retrieval team. Caleb noted the flight pattern. Too controlled. It wasn't fleeing. It was confident. He zoomed in, heart slowing to the rhythm of a hunter's trance. The door opened midair, figures emerging in drop pods. 8. No, 10. Armored. Elite. He switched comms to direct channel. Juno, intercept protocol. Marking new high-value targets. No mercy. A chorus of clicks acknowledged the command. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the last of Earth's precision legacy, trained from childhood in terrains no machine dared to map, taught to breathe with the wind and kill without sound. As the pods struck the Earth with sonic booms, the air trembled. Caleb's I never left the crosshair. He watched one of the armored figures rise, tall, insectal armor, plasma blade unsheathed. He squeezed. The round traveled 3,000 meters in less than a second, shattering the kinetic shield and splintering the creature's skull like glass. "Target 1 down," he said, even before the body hit the ground. The second figure spun toward the ridge. It was fast, scarily so. Caleb's neural net buzzed. Danger. The enemy had triangulated the shot. Plasma mortars angled skyward. "Move," Caleb ordered. Juno scattered like leaves in a storm. The mountain ridge exploded in fire and steam as plasma bombs pulverized rock and ice. Caleb dove, rolled, came up in a crouch, already scanning for new angles. 2 hostiles advancing up the west slope. Came Riker's voice, tight, sharp. "Pull them in. We want them in the kill zone." Caleb reloaded with fluid motion, slinging his rifle into a secondary slot and pulling up the ballistic lancer, a hybrid long-range and kinetic explosive weapon, ancient by galactic standards, savage by Earth's. A shadow passed over the ice. Caleb turned his gaze upward. The dreadnought was descending, slow and inevitable like a falling moon. Its underbelly glowed with fusion wells. Troop deployment hatches were opening. "Earth Command," Caleb said into the long-range comms. "Confirm visual on Sovereign dreadnought above grid delta. Echo 7? A beat passed. Then a calm voice. Confirmed. "Orders." Caleb hesitated. Then, "Permission to engage." There was silence. Then, "Granted." He dropped to his belly, heart rate dropping, breath measured. The targeting uplink synced with orbital telemetry. He would get 1 shot. The dreadnought rotated slightly, exposing the vulnerable vent array on its dorsal flank. Just long enough. "Wind," Caleb whispered to himself. 0. Distance, 12,400 meters. Round, AP Devastator. He braced, pulled. The sound was less a bang than a tear. A thunderclap split through the heavens as the shot departed Earth. For seconds of silence. Then the dreadnought screamed. The shell tore through shield harmonics, shattered the vent system, and ignited the fusion coil in its midsection. A chain reaction of implosions followed, blossoms of blue flame devouring steel and void panels. The sky became daylight. For a moment, Earth was a star. Caleb shielded his eyes. Riker whooped through the comms. "Jesus, Caleb." The debris fell like burning rain. The surviving aliens were running, some stumbling into mines, others vaporized by secondary blasts. Caleb rose. He turned to where the ridge still stood tall despite the wounds. "Tell me again," he said into the wind, "how a primitive wins a war." Then he turned and walked into the ash, where men without names waited for the next shot, the next war, the next moment history would forget until another bullet rewrote the future.